Hello viewer, welcome to Worldview, a program designed to bring up to speed with one development the world over. My name is Emedion James, reaching you live from Uyo. Let's take a look at today's headlines. Trump's envoy Winkov meets Putin as ceasefire deadline looms. Heavy rains, landslide hamper rescue efforts in northern India state, dozens missing. RFK Jr. cancels $500 million in funding for mRNA vaccines for disease like COVID. Thank you. First on Worldview today, a meeting between U.S. envoy Steve Winkov and Russian Vladimir Putin at Kremlin. Winkov arrived in Moscow today as Donald Trump's deadline for Russia to agree a ceasefire in Ukraine looms. The U.S. president has said Russia could face hefty sanctions or see secondary sanctions imposed against all those who trade with it if it doesn't take steps to end the horrible war with Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, has warned that Russia could only make serious moves towards peace buying Russian oil. In the meantime, Governor Ivan Fedorov said today Russia's strikes killed 2 people and wounded 10 others, including 4 children in Ukraine's Zaporizhia region. Fedorov said Russian forces carried out 567 attacks over the last 24 hours across 16 settlements in the region. Zaporizhia has been on the front line too. Meanwhile, at least 9 buildings were damaged in the early morning strikes on the Zaporizhia city district alone, Fedorov said on a Telegram messaging app. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky said today that Russia has struck a gas facility in Ukraine's south-now Odessa region, undermining preparation for winter. He said that gas infrastructure had been attacked in the village of Novosilske on the border with Romania, where the Orlovka interconnector, through which Ukraine receives gas via Trans-Balkan route, is located. Zelensky said on Telegram that this was a deliberate blow to our preparations for the heating season. Absolutely clinical, like every Russian blow to the energy sector. Also, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he had a productive conversation with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump on ending the war, sanctions on Russia, and the finalization of a U.S.-Ukraine drone deal. Zelensky wrote on X referring to intensifying drone and missile attacks that President Donald Trump is fully informed about Russian attacks on Kiev and other cities and communities. Still on the Ukraine and Russia war scene, Ukraine's government today appointed a new economic security chief after weeks of delay as part of a campaign to strengthen governance, fulfilling a key condition for Kiev to continue receiving critical wartime support from Western lenders. Stepping out grafts and tightening a clocky bureaucracy are critical to Ukraine's bid for a membership in the European Union and its defense against a Russian invasion now in its 4th year. Prime Minister Yulia Shiradinkov said Alexander Tivzvansky, a former anti-corruption investigator, was appointed to lead the Economic Security Bureau after proper checks that included a successful polygraph test. Ukraine's previous government had come under fire last month for failing to appoint Sivinsky, who was who was unanimously backed by an international selection committee over security concerns. Watchdog had cast doubt on that explanation. Away from that, former Romanian President Ion Iliescu, who presided over the country's chaotic transition from communism to democracy, has died aged 95. Iliescu had been diagnosed with lung cancer and hospitalized in early June in Romania capital Bucharest. A government statement said, "It is with deep regret that the government announces the passing of the former president of Romania, Ion Iliescu." Ion Iliescu was Romania's first freely elected president and served twice between 1990 to 1996 and 2000 to 2004. He was, however, accused of crimes against humanity over the violent revolt that toppled Romania's communist regime in 1989, but always denied wrongdoing. In a separate development, heavy rain and blocked roads hampered rescue efforts in India's Himalayan state of Uttarakhand on today. A day after sudden flooding and landslide killed 4 people and left dozens missing. Local media and authorities said that teams of army and disaster force rescuers struggled to reach Juarili village, a popular tourist spot that serves as a pit stop before climbing to the Hindu pilgrimage town of Gangtori in Uttarakhand district, as landslides blocked a major highway and heavy rain continued to pelt the region. Ashavardhan, an army colonel leading rescue efforts, said in an ex-post shared by the Indian Army that the number of missing persons is unknown. However, the relief efforts have continued through the night, and they are trying to rescue people and take them to safety. In the meantime, India expects to lose a competitive advantage in about $64 billion worth of goods exported to the U.S. due to President Donald Trump's 25% tariff and an assumed 10% penalty for buying Russian oil, 4 sources told Newsman, citing an internal assessment report by the government. India faces its most serious diplomatic crisis with the United States in years after Trump imposed the highest tariff among Asian peers on goods imported from India even before any penalty. A relatively low share of exports in India's $4 trillion economy is seen in limiting a direct impact on growth to 40 basis points. Elsewhere, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services plans to cancel $500 million in funding for mRNA vaccines being deployed to counter viruses that cause disease such as the flu and COVID-19. HHS said this will impact 22 projects being led by major pharmaceutical companies, including Pfizer and Moderna, for vaccines against bird flu and other viruses. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a vaccine skeptic, announced he was pulling the funding over claims that mRNA technology poses more risks than benefit for these respiratory viruses. Doctors and health experts have criticized Kennedy's long-standing questioning of the safety and efficacy of vaccines and his views on health policies. A former U.S. Food and Drug Administration official, Peter Lurie, the development of mRNA vaccines to target COVID-19 was critical in helping slow down the pandemic and saving millions of lives. In a separate development, a silent prayer was held in Japan today as it marked 80 years since the United States dropped an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba attended the ceremony today, along with officials from around the world and the city's mayor, Kazumi Misu. World War II ended with Japan's surrender after the dropping of bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The bombs killed more than 200,000 people, some from the immediate blasts and others from radiation, sicknesses, and burns. The legacy of the weapons continues to haunt survivors today. In the meantime, Pope Leo today criticized the illusory security of the global nuclear deterrent system in an appeal on the 80th anniversary of the United States dropping an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima at the end of the Second World War. Leo, the first US-born pope, said in his weekly audience that the destruction in Hiroshima, which killed about 78,000 people instantly, should serve as a universal warning against the devastation caused by nuclear weapons. Let's move now to the Israel and Gaza war scene, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met senior security officials to finalize a new strategy for the nearly two-year war in Gaza Strip, with media reporting he favored a complete military takeover of the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territory. Despite intense international pressure for a ceasefire to ease hunger and the appalling condition in the besieged enclave, efforts to mediate a truce between Israel and Palestinian militant group Hamas, which governs Gaza, have collapsed. Local health authorities said at least 20 people were killed by Israeli gunfire as they waited for United Nations and trucks in the northern Gaza Strip. In southern Gaza, 20 people were wounded by Israeli gunfire as they waited to get aid from UN aid trucks near Morak Square, near Rafah, medics said. 8 more people died of starvation or malnutrition in the last day. Gaza's health ministry said, while at least 80 people were killed in the latest Israeli firing. Still in the Middle East, Iran executed a man today convicted of spying for Israel and passing on information about a nuclear scientist killed in Israel's June attack on the Islamic Republic. The report claimed Rozab Vadi had worked in one of Iran's important and sensitive organizations without going into further details. Execution of Iranians convicted of spying for Israel has significantly increased this year, with at least 8 sentenced to death carried out in recent months. Away from that, New Zealand Air Force said today it had evacuated 3 people from a United States research base in Antarctica in what it said was a high-risk operation in freezing temperatures and perpetual darkness. 1 person requiring urgent medical care and 2 others needing medical attention were taken on a rescue flight from the McMurdo station. Aircraft landed in New Zealand's city of Christchurch today. The statement also gave no details of the medical emergency or nationalities. Andy Scott, a New Zealand Air Commando, said the extreme cold and landing on a runway of ice in the dark make midwinter flight to Antarctica one of the most challenging air crews can perform. In France, firefighters in southern France struggled today to control a massive wildfire that has already swept through an area bigger than Paris as the blaze spread rapidly through forests and villages, forcing residents and tourists to flee. 1 person died in the village of Saint-Laurent de la Cabrissa, about 30 kilometers from the city of Perpignan. The fire has burned down at least 25 houses, Many roads in the areas are closed so far. 13 hectares have burned, similar to the total area that burned around all of France in 2024 and more than twice the area hit by wildfires in 2023, Environment Minister Agnes Pena said on X. Let's take a quick break right now. After the break, we'll take a look at U.S. requirements concerning Zambia and Malawi citizens. Do stay joined to us for these and many more right after the breather. Many thanks for staying tuned onto Worldview today. Let's move now to Africa, where President Donald Trump's administration will require visa applicants from Zambia and Malawi to pay bonds up to $15,000 for some tourist and business visas under a pilot program launching in 2 weeks. The State Department said in a notice on its website that starting August 20, 2025, any citizen or national traveling on a passport issued by one of these countries who is found otherwise eligible for a B1/B2 visa must post a bond in amount of $5,000, $10,000 or $15,000 determined at time of visa interview. A State Department spokesperson has said that the said countries could be identified based on high overstay rate, screening and vetting deficiencies, concerns regarding acquisitions of citizenship by investment without a residency requirement, and foreign at least 45 women and children in an overnight raid on 5 villages in the northwest Nigeria, witnesses say, in a second mass kidnapping in the area within days. The attackers returned to Sabongari, Damri, and raided nearby villages including Sade, Tunga, Swase, Tunga Sodangi, and Tunga Musa Dongo in an assault that lasted until dawn. Shehu Musa, the traditional head of Damrim, told newsmen by phone. The incident followed a separate mass abduction in Sabongari Damri in Zamfara State on Saturday, in which 70 people were taken. Let's move down to the Asian Pacific region, where South Korea will offer visa-free entry to tourist groups from China for a temporary period from September 29 through June 2026 to boost foreign tourism ahead of an Asian Pacific summit, the government said today. The visa-free offer was first announced in March after China's decision last November to offer a visa exemption to South Korean and foreign visitors from other countries. It also comes amid expectations that ties between the two countries will improve under the new South Korean administration of Liberal President Lee Jong-il. South Korea will host a summit of leaders from 21 economies for the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum from October 31 to November 1st in the southeastern city of Gyeongyong, a gathering where Chinese leaders Xi Jinping and US President Donald Trump might hold separate talks. And with that, we wrap up our package for you and well day. Do ensure to follow us on social